Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser, a member, of course, of IDSF and the former head of the research division at the Israel Defense Forces Intelligence Corps, as well as the Director General of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. During his military service, he served, among other positions, as the Central Command's intelligence officer and as the intelligence attaché to the United States. He also participated in the Yom Kippur War and the First Lebanon War. General Kuperwasser, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. And as the briefing progresses, if you have any questions to ask, please, of course, feel free to throw them in the chat. General, I'd like to start off with discussing really your expertise, military intelligence. And we all know that there was, unfortunately, something went terribly wrong with the military intelligence of October 7th. And I'm curious to know, has there been any developments or understanding of what went wrong? And has that at all informed the war in Gaza moving forward?
Well, it's less about understanding what happened. It's more about having more information about what happened. It doesn't necessarily lead us to understand differently what happened. The news is, I would say that it turns out that the terrorists of Hamas changed their SIM cards on the night between 6th and 7th of October and put Israeli SIM cards. At least several dozens of them did that. And this was captured by, noticed by the Israeli intelligence. And nevertheless, this strong conception or dogma that the Hamas is deterred, that Hamas is not able to carry out an attack, that Hamas is just practicing and training itself. And because of that, we shouldn't even not only do anything, but not even brief the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister about something really strange that's happening in Gaza, was not challenged, even though there was all this information. And amazingly, the people that followed this development didn't connect that with the information they knew about the plan, the big plan, what's called the Jericho Wall, which is termed the Al-Aqsa Deluge by Hamas. And they didn't connect the dots, and it's just turning us more and more confused and frustrated with the way the intelligence and the security forces, not only the intelligence, reacted to the information they had in their hands at that point of time. What the thing that we can learn from that is, I hope that the lesson learned will be that, first of all, the lessons should be learned rapidly so that we should not be repeating the same mistakes. We might do different mistakes, but not the same mistakes. And the other point is that that this might happen in many other cases, not exactly the same way, not necessarily with the SIM cards, but there are all kinds of early warning signs that should be developed in some model of early warning, so that if something happens, you know that you have to do all kinds of take all kinds of steps in order to be better prepared. And unfortunately, this was not done here. And on top of all of that, this decision not to wake up the decision makers, not the Prime Minister, neither the Minister of Defense, is beyond my mind. I cannot understand how this has happened, and it tells us how deep the two conceptions that the intelligence had at the point. The conception about the enemy, that it's so deterred, turned its focus from destroying Israel to improving the living conditions in Gaza, and is unable to launch an attack of the size it did, just dominated them the way they thought. And coming to think about it, even if they thought it's only a small attack, only on two villages, two communities near the border, was that not justifying waking up the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense? It's really unbelievable. And secondly, it tells us the other conception that they had. It's about how good they were. They were so convinced that they know better. They know better than Hamas. They know exactly what's going on. They have intelligence dominance. The fact that they had the information about the SIM cards just tells you that we have good access, and we cannot be surprised because we know everything. And we have a good defense along the border. So we shouldn't be worried about it. And even if we are mistaken, it's not the answer. And we are not mistaken. We cannot be mistaken. And I think the lesson learned from that is from here on, we have to be very, very humble. I'm saying it because, just let's take, for example, one case in which this humbleness is so necessary. For ages, we've been told that the Iranians, yes, they accumulate 60% enriched uranium, which is very close to military grade, and they can have actually enough fissile material for 3 nuclear devices within less than a month. So, but the intelligence organizations, both in the United States and in Israel, tell us all the time that you don't have to worry because according to our assessment, the Iranians need something like a year and a half or 2 years before they can turn this fissile material into a bomb. Well, humble intelligence organizations would say, maybe you don't know what exactly the Iranians are doing, because it makes sense that they would prepare themselves to shorten this period and work on all kinds of programs that would enable them to do that within a much shorter period of time. And here again, humility is so important, and to say that even if we think we know, it doesn't mean that we actually know. And this is one of the lessons learned from what we see today in Gaza about what happened on the 6th and 7th of October.
So would it be fair to say, based on what you're saying, that it's not really right for us to call it an intelligence failure as much as a failure in our ideology or perceptions or understanding of the enemy? Meaning it's not like video cameras were all down and there was a technical issue with the intelligence, but we had a certain belief system which was completely false.
Definitely. We had a belief system that was shared mainly and came from the intelligence, because the intelligence was a generator, in my mind, of this belief. But it spread all over the Israeli security establishment, from the prime minister to the officers of the division responsible for Gaza. Everybody was under this impression, and within our lessons learned from the Yom Kippur War, we decided not to have only one body that would give you an assessment about the intentions of the enemy and what they're planning, but to have 5 of them. And on the 6th of October, we had 5 organizations that were supposed to come up with an early warning. And all of them got the information, I guess. This would have to be checked in the investigation that is going to be launched soon, I hope. But provided that they all have the information, nevertheless, all of them had the same idea. All of them thought that Hamas was deterred and did not sound the alarm. And this is frustrating, as I said, just frustrating. As somebody who came from the intelligence, it drives me crazy.
So what is your level of confidence right now in the IDF in terms of not making this same blunder with regards to Hezbollah in Iran? Do you think we have now learned the lesson about October 7th in order to prepare for potentially escalations in this war after Gaza?
I'll put it this way, I hope so. I sincerely hope so. It's difficult to say, because you still hear all kinds of people speaking from within this military establishment and the intelligence establishment, speaking in ways that reflect the way of thinking of October 6th from time to time. Many have changed the way of thinking, but not all of them. So it's difficult to say to what extent we can rely on the intelligence not to repeat the mistakes they did and to adopt a different way of thinking. You see, we were under the impression that we know so well their intentions that it doesn't matter what we know about their capabilities. And we underestimated their capabilities based on our interpretation of their intentions. These are mistakes that I hope we shall not repeat in the future. But human beings are strange creatures. They have a learning curve, but it doesn't mean that it's goes immediately from 0 to 1. It takes time. And sometimes you repeat the same mistakes, and this is troubling. But yeah, I really want to believe, I hope it's not a wishful thinking that they are not going to repeat the same mistakes. Look, I'll give you an example, okay? There are elements in the security establishment in Israel that think, for example, today, we can change the situation in Gaza and reach the goals of the plan that the Prime Minister put forward the day after without coming to a point where we totally control Gaza from all aspects. I think they're wrong. As long as the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip would believe that Hamas is coming back in one form or another, doesn't matter if they're going to be in the government or just controlling the government of technocrats from the outside. Nothing is going to change in Gaza as long as this is going to be the case. And still, we see a lot of reluctance on behalf of the security establishment to take responsibility for Gaza. They believe that we can jump from the situation we are in now to a situation where all kinds of technocrats in Gaza that are not involved in terrorism would assume responsibility. I think this is wrong. You are not going to be able to reach this point without controlling Gaza. And even though nobody wants to control Gaza, neither do I. But a cold analysis of the situation is clear that you have to go through a stage where you control Gaza. And we are trying to have a free lunch. And I think we learned already that there are no free lunches.
You recently wrote an article about the 6 non-negotiable steps before even entertaining the possibility of revitalizing the Palestinian Authority. Are you able to share some of those steps? And also, if you think that they're possible, is there any hope of the Palestinian Authority becoming a meaningful entity, or are your 6 steps kind of a pipe dream and not necessarily going to be seen in our lifetime?
Well, it's difficult to say. First of all, I'm sure it's not going to be easy to convince the Palestinians to adopt the 6 steps. But let's start with one of them. There are 6 steps that I wrote together with Maurice Hirsch, this article. One is condemn 7th of October atrocities, condemn the massacre. I mean, let's start with that. Let's at least see them condemning the massacre of October 7th. Let's see them starting to fight against terror instead of promoting terror and encouraging terror. And for that purpose, let's see them saying that Hamas is a terror organization. It's not a legitimate part of the Palestinian body politic. It's no, that's something we all understand, that Hamas is a terror organization. Do we need an explanation from the Palestinian Authority that they look, this is a political entity? It's not a political entity. This is a terror organization. And as long as they don't consider Hamas terror organization, don't start fighting terror, we cannot allow them assume responsibility in Gaza. Same with their strange habit of paying salaries to terrorists. This is mind-boggling. How can we give somebody who is paying salaries to terrorists and has already explicitly said that he's going to pay salaries to the terrorists of the 7th of October as well? How can we give this organization responsibility for Gaza? Directly or indirectly, doesn't matter. And they have to stop the incitement. If they don't stop the incitement, why would we give them control of Gaza? The terror attacks happened because of the incitement. I mean, the point to which these people's minds were brainwashed is such that based on what the Palestinian Authority teaches them, they were so proud of the fact that they killed Jews in areas that are not occupied territory, but are Israel proper. And they did it from an area that was not occupied by Israel, but what was actually a de facto state run by Hamas and run by the Palestinians. So it's this incitement has to stop, and they have to stop using their ability to operate in the international arena in order to delegitimize Israel. Why would we give somebody whose only purpose in life is to delegitimize Israel and convince the world that Israel doesn't have the right to exist, the ability to rule Gaza? It's these are not things that, in my mind, can be negotiated. These things have to happen if you want to have a Palestinian Authority there. I know that the chances that these are going to happen are very low, mainly because even though the United States believes in everything I'm saying, they don't really demand the Palestinian Authority to go to through these changes. And they only look at the question of whether it's a technocratic government or a political government. Who cares? It's those technocrats believe in the same narrative. What is demanded from the Palestinian Authority is to change the narrative. And if they don't change the narrative, they cannot rule Gaza. The sixth point that I added was accept Israel as a Jewish state of the Jewish people. There can't be any peace between us and the Palestinians if they don't accept that. This is the basis of the Palestinian narrative. Palestinian narrative says that the Jews are not a people and that the Jews don't have sovereign history in this piece of land. And because of that, they are not entitled to have a state of their own in this piece of land. And this is going to eternalize the conflict and promote the ongoing struggle against Israel, which is the gist of the Palestinian narrative, struggle until Israel's demise. And this has to change. If we want to give the Palestinian Authority a role in Gaza, they have to change in all these aspects. They are not going to do that? Fine. Then we should not give them a role in Gaza. That's my conclusion from that.
Now, a lot of what you write about the PA could equally be applied to many other factions in the Middle East. So does it really matter who the ruling authority is in Gaza, whether it's the PA or another entity that ideologically is aligned?
Yeah, well, anybody who has the same ideology like the PA should not rule Gaza. Not only the PA. I mean, the Syrians didn't apply for ruling Gaza, so it's all right. Assad doesn't want to rule Gaza. But if, on the contrary, countries like the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain or Morocco would like to get involved in supporting the new rulers of Gaza and educating them in a different direction, then yes, we have the accords with them, and if Saudi Arabia is going to join in and form normal relations with Israel and accept that the 6 points, and I think the Saudis accept at least 5.5 points of these points, and so do the Emirates and the Bahrainis. They accept almost all the points, and for the UAE. They have accepted that Israel is the state of the Jewish people. That's something very important. They look at Israel as a Jewish state. And so, yes, I'm not hopeless totally. I think that if these countries have crossed this Rubicon and were able to adopt some of these 6 points, why not the Palestinians? Well, not tomorrow morning, but the sooner the better. And let's start with point number 1. Condemn 7th of October. Let's start moving in this direction. And I say that I'm hopeful. Another thing that's very important here is that if this is going to happen the day after, I mean, in the day after, it's going to be a military issue. And as I said before, we shall have to rule Gaza militarily and take care of the civilian business as well. That's going to be the day after. But the day after, once people get convinced that Hamas is not coming back, we can convince some people in Gaza to adopt some of these points and assume responsibility in some areas of Gaza. It's going to take time. De-radicalization, de-Hamasization, de-narrativization of the Palestinian narrative is going to take time, but one has to start somewhere.
General, thank you for taking all of my questions. The upcoming potential ceasefire that is in discussion, how do you think that will affect the war? Will that embolden Hezbollah and Iran? Will there be broader implications in just the return of hostages, let's say?
Well, it depends on the conditions of the ceasefire, and I think that it's not the fact that we have a ceasefire doesn't decide what are the implications by itself. If the ceasefire would mean that there's not going to be a resumption of the war later on to finish the job and kick Hamas out of Gaza, then it's going to be a big achievement for Hamas and for Iran and for Hezbollah, of course. And also for Qatar and Turkey and many radicals around the globe that are demonstrating in support for a ceasefire. If everybody would understand that Israel is trying to make it clear that this is a temporary pause, maybe a long one, but relatively long one compared with the previous one, but still only a pause, that once the implementation of this exchange is coming to an end, the war resumes, then it's not going to be an achievement for Iran and for all these others. And their major concern is not what's going to happen with the hostages or what are going to be the conditions regarding the influx of humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. They care about the people of Gaza like they don't care about it. It's what they care about is to make sure that Hamas stays in power in Gaza. And if they realize that Hamas is not going to stay in power in Gaza, this is going to be a major defeat for them, because it means that the idea of launching this attack on the 7th of October was the wrong idea. And they are all going to pay for that. And that's why it's so important that we make it clear that this deal is not going to be the end of the war. It's just a step in order to release as many hostages as we can. And thereafter, we should continue with the war and the takeover of Rafah, and make sure that the war ends without Hamas in Gaza. And I hope this is going to convince Hamas to leave Gaza by their own decision and not wait until this fight for Rafah happens, because it's just more suffering for the population, just more suffering for Hamas itself, and it's more dangerous for Egypt. So the best thing to do is to leave Gaza on their own decision.
Now, if the leadership of Hamas were to leave Gaza, let's say there are tunnels allowing them to exit into Egypt, is that in Israel's best interest? Because that would then mean we haven't fully, so to speak, defeated Hamas, because that level of leadership has just exited the stage for right now.
Well, yeah, they have leadership outside of Gaza anyhow, so it doesn't matter. If they leave if Hamas leadership and operators leave Gaza by their own decision and move through Egypt to Algeria or I don't know where, Ireland, then this is, in my mind, fine with Israel. We should probably, if they do it without an agreement, we should probably hunt them elsewhere. If they leave in a context of an agreement, then we may take upon ourselves all kinds of commitments about their safety. But yes, this is the best thing for everybody. We can make sure that many lives are going to be saved if this is going to be the development that we should witness.
General, we only have a few minutes left. Maybe we can use this time just to touch briefly on Iran. Once this war in Gaza comes to a close, what do you think our next steps should be with regards to Iran?
Well, we shouldn't wait until this war is over. I think the Iranian challenge is immediate. The way the Iranians provoke instability in the Middle East and try to have hegemony in the region, and the way the Iranians are making progress towards having a nuclear weapon, and the way the Iranians are supporting Russia in its war in Ukraine. All these are good reasons to tackle the Iranian problem right now. Unfortunately, there is this attitude that whatever can be postponed for tomorrow will be postponed for tomorrow. But tomorrow the problems are going to become much bigger than they are today. That's a big problem, and that's why I think we should do something now. We should put more pressure on Iran. We should clarify to Iran that they're playing with fire, and it may catch them, this fire, and that there is a credible military threat against them, and that more economic sanctions are needed, and more support for the Iranian opposition is needed to make sure that they can trust the West in their effort to unsettle the regime in this terrible regime in Iran.
Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great pleasure to speak with you and to learn from you. And I have no doubt that all of our viewers also appreciated the opportunity. I hope we can have you back again to share more with us. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers for tuning in. And I'll just remind everyone that we are in the works now of planning another tour, another trip to the US. So if you are joining us from the US and you would be interested in having one of our generals, one of the leaders of our movement speak in your community, please reach out and we will make every effort to bring these briefings live to you in your own community. With that, I thank everyone for joining. I wish you to stay strong, stay safe. Join us tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time, when we continue these briefings. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.